Well, hi everyone. I'm delighted today to be joined by the clarinetist Anthony McGill and our music director Dame Jane Glover to talk about their upcoming concert, McGill Plays Mozart, happening on the 27th of February at the North Shore Centre for the Performing Arts, and then on Monday, the 28th of February at the Harris Theatre downtown. Anthony, Jane, welcome.
Thank you.
So great to see you both. I'm used to seeing Jane all the time, but this is my first time saying hello and meeting Anthony, and I think also for you, Jane, right?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to meet Anthony, and I can't wait to meet you in person and get going on this glorious concerto.
I can't wait. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun.
Anthony, you're a native Chicagoan. I wanted to kick off just by asking you how much this city means to you and how it shaped you as a musician.
Yeah, I grew up in Chicago and I was there until I was about 15 years old. And my parents lived there for many years after as well. They don't anymore, but it shaped everything about me, especially as a musician, as a person. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and I studied music right downtown, right in the Fine Arts Building for youth orchestra and the Dearborn Station for the Merit School of Music when it was down there, and other places. And so I spent all of my formative years as a musician. Some of the first notes I ever played as a clarinetist were right down there on Michigan Avenue, or close by. So it meant everything to me. It means everything for me to go back to Chicago and play as an adult as well, because it's always home.
Absolutely. And I can testify, having walked through the corridors of the Merit School, which is no longer in Dearborn Station, but a beautiful newer property, that there's a kind of hall of fame of photographs as you walk down that corridor, and you're right up at the very front of it with your brother Damari.
Yeah, it's a really amazing thing, because it doesn't feel like that many years, even though it was quite a few ago that I was there. So it's awesome. It's a great place, great program.
Now, Jane, of course, you too are no stranger to Chicago. In fact, we're approaching your 20th anniversary as music director of Music of the Baroque. And every year you do a Mozart concert. And so this year, it's at last a chance to hear the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, which I think you have only done once before with Music
in my
of the
time,
Baroque.
yes.
In
We haven't done it.
2006.
Yes, we haven't done it very much. And it's high time we did it again, because it is, I really believe, one of the greatest concertos of all, and not just for the clarinet. And we always, Anthony, do a concert around Mozart's birthday, which actually is 27th of January, as you know. And often we get on Mozart's birthday, which is always lovely. I don't know whether the audience sort of enjoy celebrating his birthday as much as we do, but we just always do. It's got a bit later this year because of people's availabilities, but this is really what we're doing, and to do one of the great concertos and one of the great symphonies is what we try and do every year. It's just become a lovely tradition for us. And of course, the clarinet concerto, in a way, the clarinet was the instrument that most excited Mozart, don't you think? It was the new kid on the block in the 18th century, and once he'd met Anton Stadler, who was his great buddy, and Stadler said, "Come on, write me a quintet, and now write me a concerto."
Yeah,
I came with these great pieces.
yeah. I mean, I'm really glad that friendship happened because, to be able to play one of the great concerti as a wind player is so special. And not to mention the piano and wind quintet,
Exactly,
which is
yes.
stunning. That was one of his favorite pieces as well, I think. And then the clarinet quintet. I mean, there's the trio. Yeah, but this one has everything in it, because it's like a mini, just to go on about it a little bit, I like it because it's kind of it's a little operetta, it's an opera, it's a chamber work, it's a symphony, it has it all in there, I think. That's what makes it stunning.
It's interesting that it's in A major. You talk about it being operatic. A major, don't you think, is Mozart's key of seduction? It's his key of passion.
Oh, yes.
And he very much gives it to his what is now his favorite instrument. You know, when he first discovered the clarinet in an orchestra in Mannheim in the 1780s, he just wrote home and saying, why don't we have clarinets in Salzburg? You know, it's just such an exciting sound when you get flutes and oboes and clarinets and bassoons. I mean, this was such a new concept, what we now accept as the standard wind setup of an orchestra. But it was still, in many of his symphonies, quite rare. He doesn't use clarinets in many of the symphonies. But as you say, when he does write for it, he writes so, just so correctly for it, wouldn't you say? I mean, even with a brand new instrument, he knew exactly what it could do and what it needed to do.
Completely. So I'm very jealous of some of my colleagues in the wind section when they perform a few different pieces. I don't know exactly which piano concerto it is, but there's a piano concerto without clarinet. There's one, well, there are many, but there's one without that has a gorgeous wind section, right? But in the later concerti, he brings the clarinet in. All of a sudden, this music is so full and rich, and he has the full capacity of that wind section. It's like there was a character missing from the stage of the opera, and then all of a sudden he discovers the clarinet, and he's like, that's the voice that we didn't have all these years.
Yeah, yes, but of course there's even in the piano concertos, which is so interesting when he does use them, it's very much like chamber music, isn't it? It is like the wind chamber, that the Harmonie Musik brought into the concerto. And you do feel in so many of those concertos, with or without clarinets actually, that he's making chamber music with his mates, because that's what he was doing.
Yeah, and back to the key of A major, or just to that seductive feel and sound. I love, just to get specific about the concerto, you know this as well, is that he like directly quotes Don Giovanni in the clarinet part in one of the movements, and it's pretty fascinating to hear all of the different aspects of the operas in the music. There's magic flute in there, bump bump. In the last movement, he throws everything at the kitchen sink into the last movement of the piece.
Well, and of course that was sort of an in-joke for Stadler, because he would have recognized all that.
Yeah.
And so would many of his fellow musicians too. I mean, he was very much a sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink composer, wasn't he, with his in-jokes?
Yeah.
And I love it that he does that. And so, but, you know, we get this lovely last movement, which is a sort of dance movement anyway, and the first movement you talk about. But we have to talk about the slow movement too, as just being one of those unbelievable Mozart slow movements, which can both break your heart and give you the greatest joy.
It's true. Some of the most, how should I say, innocent sounding, not in this particular case in the clarinet concerto, but some of the most innocent, happy, lovely sounding arias in the operatic repertoire, they're singing about terrible things, you know, or just about, you know, just the saddest things. And it's that juxtaposition of like, is this a sad moment in the piece? Is it happy? Are we smiling? Are we crying? Are we doing both at the same time?
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
And the only other person who can do that to you is Shakespeare, I think.
True.
Discussed.
So, Anthony, I'm figuring maybe that perhaps this is the clarinet concerto you get to you're asked to perform perhaps more than any other, and it is so well known. I'm interested to know, how do you bring something new or fresh, considering A, you've performed it so many times, and B, you're asked to do it so many times?
Oh my gosh, this is a very it's a very interesting question, because every time I play the piece, um, I practice and learn it like I'm playing it for the first time. So it is never old. It's never old, because it is so, in a way, in so many different areas, so challenging of a work that you can't take any moment for granted in it. So I practice it like it's the first time I'm playing it, almost every time I do it. So in that process, I learn different things about it. And every time I perform it, I learn different areas that I hear different things, because I'm playing it usually with a different ensemble. I'm playing it with a different conductor.
Right.
And in
And
a different hall too.
in a different hall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it becomes a very unique performance. It becomes
Yeah.
a own special work in a way each time. You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
sit, it's not like visual art doesn't sit on the wall and just it look kind of the same. I guess you could visit it and you're in a different place, but it's so different in so many different ways that brings the extra energy and inspiration, if you will, to it. But there are also different corners of it that you don't hear every time you listen to it. And so every time you are involved in it, every time you're inside of it, you're hearing many, many different things. Whether that's how your part interacts with the flute line or the bassoon line or the violas in this one section. You're listening to, kind of, you're focused inward mostly, but it's not. That's like your practice on your by yourself. When you're in the middle of the orchestra, of the chamber ensemble, then you can hear how your voice interacts with everyone, and that creates many different colors, many different experiences.
Absolutely. Well, I think you've articulated very well the magic of live performances and the ability for music to recreate itself depending on, as we say, the soloist, the conductor, the ensemble, and the building, the acoustics, and everything else. Jane, similarly for you, I mean, you know all of Mozart's works so well. And I'm sure you've conducted the Clarinet Concerto many times before. It's been 16 years since you will have done it with music of the Baroque.
Gosh, is it really? Wow.
But, looking back, have there been memorable times, collaborations with other artists, or standout moments when you've had the chance to perform this great, beautiful work that everyone loves so much?
Oh gosh. When I was with the London Mozart players, it was standard fare, and I used to do it a lot with our principal clarinet, Angela Malmesbury. Indeed, we recorded it together. But actually, the very first recording I ever made, was with the London Mozart players, and Andrew Mariner, who of course became principal of the LSO. I was the principal of the LSO, who I'd known actually at university. We were at university together, and it was a good mate. And of course, I knew his dad.
Sir Neville.
Yes, and so Andrew and I, it was the first time he'd recorded it. He's recorded it since, I think, and first time I'd recorded anything. So, and I look back on that with deep affection, because it was such an adventure for me. As you say, I've done it a lot since, all over the place, but I'm perfectly certain that the most exciting and distinguished one will happen any minute now with Anthony.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Anthony, I'm fascinated when you change your performer hat from being the principal clarinetist with the New York Philharmonic and then come and work with us as a soloist. How important is that to make that transition from being an orchestral musician in the driving seat of the clarinet section, and then to have these solo performances? As a musician, how important is it to do that? And should you do it regularly? Is it important to do it for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very much a part of my training and a lot of our training as musicians, just period, is that no one takes the clarinet and is practicing orchestra excerpts from the very beginning of their career, and like that's the, at least I hope not. So like it's really a dream to be able to do both, to also do chamber music, because life as a musician isn't about one particular type of music. I think it's about one's love and dedication to music, like maybe all music. And so to be able to connect those dots, between using the use of the clarinet in an opera, or the use of the clarinet in a symphony or a concerto, where you're accompanying a person playing a concerto, that perspective as a principal clarinetist actually helps kind of enliven and give me a little bit of insight into what my role is as a soloist in the Clarinet Concerto by Mozart, and with all of the other composers as well. I think it enriches the experience to really be able to go from, playing an opera to a symphony to a overture to a concerto, to playing the Mozart Clarinet Quintet or Brahms or anybody. Because it is all music, and just in different shapes and sizes and forms. And you get to experience the composer in a different light, doing different things, and it's made my life very rich. I feel like very fortunate to be able to go from playing in the orchestra, which and the playing as a soloist gives me kind of more energy and more confidence as a principal player in an orchestra, to kind of bring that character and that energy to playing that role in the orchestra. So I just feel very lucky to be able to do that. And it's very different. It is different, it is, they have different challenges, so it's not all, easy. Yeah. But that makes me practice more.
Anthony, I think you're seen by so many people as an inspiration to particularly young musicians of color entering the profession and becoming professional musicians. As we know, there's a great underrepresentation of Hispanic and African American and people from diverse backgrounds in American orchestras. In fact, orchestras around the world. And you've written and talked about this very well. I'd love to chat to you a little bit in terms of where we are in 2021 or now 2022 about all of this, because we at Music of the Baroque, although we play the music of 2, 3, 4, 5 centuries and before, we want to be very relevant to the world around us. And for example, in this concert, we're inviting 4 Project Inclusion Fellows. This is a program that Paul Freeman set up with the Chicago Sinfonietta originally, and then Grand Park Music Festival have also run a similar program. And now Music of the Baroque, and thanks to our partners in the city, we're going to give some young professionals an experience of working with Jane and working with our orchestra. And so I'd love just to hear your thoughts on how things are hopefully improving and getting better, but also how far we still have to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to for me is that I was able to be given a certain opportunity to be exposed to the world of music, also invited and included into the community of musicians in Chicago in a very particular way, in a very purposeful way, through the people that founded Merit School of Music, which was part of its mission was to help kids like myself who were from the inner city. And that's why it was a grassroots community music program, tuition free as well. And without how should I say, even all of those years ago, 30 something years ago, without an organization like that really believed in, before it was popular, believed in diversity and inclusion and equity and all of these things in regards to music, I wouldn't be here today. And so for me, it's not just a thing that we're trying to do for some, for just the moment, you know. But it is something that is a part of what has made a life for me and many others that I know. And so for the community of musicians as a whole around the world, or maybe in the US, or maybe in Chicago, or wherever it may be, to actually sincerely understand the value of everyone having an opportunity to see someone that looks like them, or someone that thinks like them or loves like them on the stage, is something that's very, very necessary, you know. And I think that once we start to think of it like that in our culture of music, in classical music especially, but in other music, you know, all around the world in different fields, I think you understand that you know, we're not in isolation. We don't live in isolation. So the fact that our organizations could look just like so one-sided, it makes you question, how did that become?
Right.
And so being able to question that in order to change the culture of one's organization or the culture of one's society is something that is very important. Because if we believe that everyone is created equal and everyone is beautiful and everyone has, you know, right to belong, then we need to try harder to make that happen in whatever way possible for the betterment of the art form, I think. So in the last, you talked about, to answer your question, in the last few years, do we think the art form has gotten smaller because we've started to do invite people in? We've started to expand the repertoire that was already there, or invite others that are creating repertoire that's new and invite them into the sphere or into the concert hall as well, and really include those voices? I think the art form is better for it, certainly. And this is not to exclude others. I think it's all about expansion and inclusion, and that includes the Baroque. It includes Mozart. It includes Jesse Montgomery. It includes all of these people. It includes me. You know, it includes Jane and Bach.
Absolutely.
I think
Well
that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, no, well said. Family connections. Your brother Damare is a principal flute in Seattle. You're obviously two close brothers. I mean, both of you have made it to the top in your respective instruments, two of the top orchestras in America. How does that feel? I mean, it must be a very proud thing for the McGill family.
Yeah, I think my parents are very proud for sure. And they're still around to see all of this take place. And because of them, they just believed in education. They were both educators and they were both visual artists at the time. And they just knew that they came from backgrounds that were not in music, not in art, not in, you know, these sorts of things. And they found a love for art that enabled them to achieve great things and go to college for in their first generation, you know, and have success at that. So they were like, yeah, music, of course, you play music. All successful people in the world play music, get music lessons, get tennis lessons, go to school. Yet, you know, they offered us these things that you know, that were only for those others, you know, the rich mainly, you know. and yet with what they had, they were like, they found the people that were exposed us to music. They didn't know we'd become professional musicians. So but my brother like fell in love with music. He's 4 years older than me, and I saw that happen as a young person. Probably from the time I was 3 or 4, I listened to my brother practice the flute. And from that is where it all began. And so, you know, they gave that to us, and then he gave that to me, you know, to kind of discover that on my own.
That's fabulous. Sibling inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, we're so looking forward to you being here back in Chicago. We're delighted that the New York Philharmonic makes it possible in your life that you can actually come and work with ensembles like ours. We've been trying for a while to get you onto our stage. It's so great. I mean, you're such a busy musician. It's so great that you're going to play this amazing concerto with Jane, and there's so much excitement about it. Jane, you're looking forward to this big night, right?
Completely, absolutely, can't wait.
Wonderful.
And I think we'll have a lot to say to each other in the music, Anthony.
Yeah, yeah. I so look forward to it. I'm glad we got to meet ahead of time and discuss it and talk about it, actually, because it makes me even more excited about it.
So you got your work cut out already, even before you start rehearsing. But it'll be wonderful. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for joining us, and thank you everybody watching. We're going to leave this video up on our website, obviously after the event. But if you happen to be watching it before the 27th and the 28th of February, then please come along and enjoy these two great concerts at the North Shore Center for the Performing Arts on February the 27th, and downtown Chicago, the Harris Theater, on February 28th. Jane, Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.